How many people have not heard of Tanium? A few hands, yes. Okay, well I didn't hear of Tanium either. When I was an FBI cyber special agent in New York, I saw a product demo, and then I turned in my badge and gun and came to Tanium, and now I run our internal IT security team. So make sure we don't get hacked, please don't hack us, and do application security and other fun stuff. But has anyone heard or watched Mr. Robot? Yes? Okay, good. I'm also the technical consultant for the show, so hopefully you like the hacks. If you don't, then email me and come up with some better ones. But season 3, I apologize, it's supposed to be out in July. We're late filming, so it'll come out in September. So yeah, are we up? We're up? Okay. Tanium is a communication platform. Essentially, the way to think about it is I want to be able to communicate to all of my machines all the time when they're up and online. So from my perspective, when I was an agent, countless intrusions, various banks, a lot of times didn't know the computer existed. If they did, it wasn't patched. Usually when they didn't know it existed, there was domain admin credentials on there that gets popped, and then there you go. If you remember JP Morgan Chase, that was kind of what happened in very bad situation. So in this situation with Tanium, I can do something like get computer name and click the search. So you'll get our natural language parser. It'll give me some options. And going live out to the endpoints, and I'm going to pull back this information. Very simple. I'm asking for a host name, and oh, you added operating system. Okay. And live in the environment in a few seconds, I'm going to every one of the endpoints and pulling back this data. I'm going to append this. Why don't you do get computer name and IP address and operating system and chassis type and BIOS version and client time and user. Cool. I should get a few options. Once it parses the question, we'll pick the one that's user details, second from the top. Same thing. Go out to every one of the endpoints. I'm going to query that live, bring it back. Now I'm getting just typical asset inventory information, but it's fresh, live, and actionable. Let's say I do something like get installed application. I'm worried I have old versions of Java, or quite frankly, I don't know what applications I have in my environment. And I want to be able to get a list and be able to do something like stack counting and say, hey, I've got 10,000 employees, or I got 1,000 employees, I should have 1,000 of a lot of things, and then 500 and 200, and then what about the ones that are just one-offs, 1 and 2 here and there? Probably not patched, right? So I could do a filter for Java. Now I can see whether or not I have only one version, which of course I don't. I could take some of the older versions that I have, and I could say, well, maybe I want to drill down, and I want to ask more questions. I want to figure out who owns the computers, what departments, is a reboot required? There's a variety of things I could do. But really, I want to take action. I can ask a question and get some information, but 75% of the problem is really doing something. So I'm going to deploy an action, and from here is how I can do something like update Java. Or I could push it out to all my endpoints. I could do start and end times, so maybe 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. follow the sun wherever the computers are. I can distribute over X number of minutes, hours, and days. So if I have 10,000 patches, I don't want to necessarily slam my infrastructure with that. Or I can reissue, which is what I really like. So I can say anytime I see an older version of Java, maybe the computer's been offline for a month, I want to update it. Let's move back over into Interact and do something like get running process. Actually, no, do get running process just by itself. Yep. So I'm going to run this. I'm going to go out again, every endpoint. I'm going to pull back the information for every running process. So it should be probably a couple thousand that come back. And if you watch the percentage, you can sort of see over time it shouldn't really take that much long to get to around the 80–90% range. And then from there, let's do a filter on LSAS. So I have 62 LSAS, or 70. Okay, still going up. So now add running process with MD5. So now I want to add a unique variable to it. As we go out, we'll do the same, and I look at LSAS again. Why do I have so many versions? I don't know. Maybe some are purporting to be malware.exe, older versions. We had one customer that when we started to dive deep in, it's like, oh, we found an XP box we didn't know about. We found a server that we thought we decommissioned but still running because something didn't get shut off or something got turned back on. Next thing you know, all of a sudden a POC of 500 machines turned into one of 80,000, just because people can't trust their data. So this is sort of the ease of how Tanium operates. I want to just be able to think of what I want and type it and get answers. How does this all work? So let's look at a topology map. Tanium is a single server architecture. So we take one of our, actually would be our largest customer, which is the Air Force, with 750,000 endpoints. They have one server doing all that, well, two, active. And then from there, what happens is I ask a question at the Tanium server, and it gets pushed down to a leader, and the leader talks to other computers on the LAN in what we call linear chaining. I will get in trouble by all of marketing and sales saying it, but it's kind of like a botnet. And Napster seeding. But you didn't hear that from me. But essentially, that's the way that we do it. So now instead of saturating the WAN, I'm asking the questions on the LAN. So we really only end up having 5 to 10% of machines ever on the WAN communicating back to the server. The rest are on the LAN. So if I need to even do something like patching and I have like a 1 gig DAT file I want to push out, instead of doing hub and spoke to each one of the computers, I go to one computer in the chain. It gets chopped up into 64 kilobyte chunks, distribute to all the clients, and then when a new client comes on and says, hey, I need this file, it reconstitutes it from its peers on the LAN instead of having to go out to the server and do a 1 gig file multiple times, and if you have a slow link, that becomes an issue. And so if you think about it, we reduce a lot of infrastructure costs, we reduce a lot of admin costs just because it's one server. Let's go back over to, now we have a bunch of modules. So essentially, Tanium was started by David and Ryan Hindawi. They started BigFix, if anyone remembers BigFix. Got sold to IBM, became part of the Tivoli package. And they understand patching. We understand patching. That's the bread and butter. But the hub and spoke architecture broke a lot of things. It's very slow. I'm sure if anyone's using anything that is hub and spoke, you realize what I'm talking about. So as we're looking at the architecture, we said, OK, let's try to make this better and create a very solid, stable agent that doesn't blue screen a computer, because when you're running on 2/3 of banking machines in America, we can't afford to blue screen a computer. And now after we did that, it was saying, OK, we can do a lot of extensibility on top of this agent. So a lot of our customers said, hey, this is great. Amazon, good example. Hey, this is great. We have computers that can talk to each other. Tell us the things that it can't talk to. So essentially, all the computers can talk to each other on port 17472. Tell me the stuff it can't talk to, and then return that information back. So Discover ended up being that module from our customer requests. So I can go in, and I can look and see all the endpoints that are managed and unmanaged. If it has the red Tanium symbol, then it's managed. If it doesn't, if we have the IP address, we'll try to resolve the host name. MAC address, we'll try to resolve the org type. So now I can tell if it's Roku or Dell or VMware. And then from there, I can install the Tanium agent from Discover, or I can even block it with a dynamic NAC rule. The next sort of kind of customer request was, hey, we need to search for IOCs. And I could have a holistic conversation about how bad brittle IOCs are from domains and IPs and hashes. And if anyone has ever had any FBI pins or flashes, I'm sure that you've had some issues. I've written some bad ones, and we've even put some 0-byte hashes in there, and that becomes an issue. But we still need to be able to search for it. So OpenIOC, Cybox, Stix, Tax, ER rules. I'm able to do things like back off malware. I can look at the and/ors. I can do the edit of the raw XML if I like. But really, I can go into the detections after I've executed it, and I can see if I have any compromised hosts. I can see what I hit on. I can see the hosts that were involved. And really, from an IR perspective, I say to myself, I found a problem. I want to pivot to something, and be able to look at that particular endpoint and see what the issue is. And that's where we go into Trace. So Trace is our flight DVR recorder. And we're recording all system user activity on the endpoint. So, all file operations, network operations, registry, as well as Windows, Linux right now. Mac will come out in 3 months. And let's see, which one are you? Let's do AlphaDB. There we go. And we're, yeah, do you have the IP? Was it .142? Oh, look at you. You're pretty prepared. So within there, I can do something like show me the process that I clicked on, and then show me what spawned it and what it spawned. So I can go, if we go back there, I can see that it was SVC host. I can click there, I can see that it spawned command.exe. From there, I can see that it spawned who am I. I can look at the top and actually see the command line arguments of who am I. If I keep going through, host name, trying to figure out who it is, net view, and as we keep going on, you're telling yourself a story, like what is the adversary actually doing? Hey, as I keep sort of going through, it's like, oh, it's looking for PowerShell, and then of course, once it finds PowerShell, it runs Mimikatz in memory and dumps the password hashes, and from there, we have a compromised machine. The next thing I say to myself is, well, where else is this happening in my environment? So if I scroll down in the event history, like right, there should be a PowerShell. You might have jumped out of it. Yeah, click back over. How much time do I have? Oh, good. So there's a little black question on the side. From here, I can do things like enterprise-wide searches and say, show me everywhere PowerShell was run, but it really could have been malware.exe, where this hash was. But really, I care about the actual command line argument that was run, because I know that the adversary is going to reuse their commands. And now, if I click that, which we'll do, it'll actually pop me out into Tanium core, and it'll show me all the other computers that showed that exact command line argument in my environment. So now I'm doing scope and scale. Instead of having to do dead box forensic imaging of 5, 10, or one time I did 44 servers of a Fortune 10 company after a breach, I can do it on 1, 2, or 3 machines. I'm doing a lot of more dynamic hunting because we don't have time, we don't have expertise, and pretty much all the expertise for doing this is probably in this room. So we need to make it easier for people to do IR, and this is sort of the way that we did it. So the story really around from the security perspective is you have the founders that started Big Fix. They fixed the problems with the hub and spoke by creating Tanium, and then 3 years down the road, they said, we want to get into the security space. How do we do this? There's 2 ways that you can do it. The one is you can either buy a company. If the company is really good, it's going to be overpriced. If it's priced very well, they're probably not very good. The other side of it is I can just bring in the experts. So what did he do? They said, we're just going to go to, we have 3 guys from the FBI, as special agents that work cyber, that worked intrusions. We have the chief incident response from US CERT. We got 10 guys from FireEye Mandiant, 3 guys from Guidance. We all got together and said, what is it that we wish we had when we were in the trenches doing IRs? I'd probably say everyone on the team has touched every major breach in the last 8 years. So from that perspective, on top of the fact that all of our largest customers have very interesting breaches, this is sort of what happened as a result. I think that's all the time I have. I'm not sure. What time did I start? 5 minutes? Cool. The last bit I would sort of talk about is the fact that I'd probably say 2016 was the year that we decided to go all in for security. So IOC detect, trace, this is where we sort of made our place in the industry. This year, we're focusing a lot more on operations. Think about it. Security is really just good IT operations at the end of the day. We put a lot of energy in helping our customers replace a lot of the endpoints that are in their environment. I went to one customer who has 17 agents running on their desktops. That's insane. And so we have our customers that come in and say, hey, I wish you could replace SCCM. Or I wish you could replace Tripwire. Everyone hates Tripwire. They're very expensive. I wish, oh God, I should not be, anyway. But I wish that I could consolidate my endpoints in a way that made it easier on my users and made it easier to manage. So as we looked for 2017 and into 2018, the modules that we have developed are really to answer that. So Protect is a good one. Managing things like Windows Defender, App Locker, SRP, Emmet is not easy to do from the management console within Windows. So we provide that capabilities, and we provide it at a granular level. So as a IR hunter, if I find that I have, I say PowerShell shouldn't be communicating out on port 80 or 443 ever. I could actually put a rule today on any machines, whether it's servers, workstations, or the CEO's computer specifically, that doesn't do that, versus having to create a ticket and then follow that through and hope that it actually gets done. So this is a tool that a lot of our customers are starting to use now to make the Windows products that are actually getting better. I mean, I would probably say, Server 2012 and, Windows 8 was that pivotal moment of when Windows actually got better and kind of reset their kernel to be, more security focused. This is how we actually manage it. And then if you go back to the, just the list of modules. Comply is our module that we do for compliance scanning. So customers said, hey, we want to replace Qualys. What can you do since you're running on the endpoint already? So we said, okay, we'll partner with CIS, the Center for Internet Security. They have a scanner that allows us to be able to do compliance benchmark scanning. So whether it's HIPAA, SOX, or your own customized benchmarks, you're able to scan machines, see whether or not they pass or fail. If you want to, you could just in something like Archer. If not, you can just go through and say, hey, I noticed that I have a password policy that is failed. Maybe it's the computer that is not in the right OU, not getting a GPO policy. Whatever the situation is, I can correct that immediately with Tanium. So again, we're trying to make that environment where you have one place, one single source of truth, one sheet of music for operators, security, engineers, as well as the network team. And then the last bit is for the CISOs and the CIOs and other managers. So it's not just for guys like myself or Nate or the people in the room. Bosses can actually go in and say, hey, I can do a trust but verify in my environment to know whether or not what I'm told in a report is exactly what I have. With that, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you, guys.